to adopt. Would like to add, once again, we don't have our deputy mayor here, Councillor Crosman, so we would need someone to appoint, probably Councillor Butler again. We'll do that after we adopt the agenda. I just want to add that to the agenda. So we need a
So
mover.
could I have a mover and a seconder for the agenda? Conseiller Butler and Conseiller Steves. C'est bon. We'll do a show of hands. So everyone agrees. C'est bon. Merci.
Just making sure nobody's online. Nope, not yet.
Who's online?
The next would be the appointment of deputy mayor to replace you.
So
Councillor Steve.
Conseiller Steve,
Sure, I'll move that Councillor Butler be available for that.
you accept Councillor Butler? You accept?
Yes, oh, yes.
Oh,
Need a seconder, I need a
Thank you.
seconder.
And seconder is Conseiller Richard. C'est beau, so we'll do a show of hands. Right, c'est beau. On est tous d'accord. Merci. Thank you.
Next would be the approval of minutes. We have a set of minutes of, I'm assuming that this is supposed to be March 27th or March
23rd.
23rd and not today's date, because I know Marcy's good, but not that good. So if I could have that for the March meeting, please.
So I need a mover and a seconder for the minutes. Conseiller Edges and Conseiller Butler. Any questions on the minutes? No, I see none. So
Show of hands.
a show of hands again for the minutes. Merci. Thank you.
Once again, Councillor Kingston, are you online? Yes, he is. There he is. Are you okay with the minutes?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next would be conflict of interest, les déclarations des conflits d'intérêts.
Other conflicts of interest? I see none. Merci.
New business, it would be municipal plan zoning bylaw review update, and I see Josh Davies and Sarah Anderson are here to give an update.
Bonjour, Josh.
Bonjour. Let's get that PowerPoint pulled up. Perfect. Okay. It's been some time since we've been able to come to council to provide an update with respect to how the municipal plan review and zoning bylaw review is going. Things are full and well underway in terms of the work. Again, this is one of those planning exercises that we undertake every 10 years. Moncton has certainly seen a lot of change from the last time a plan review was done, which was around 2013, 2014. So we've been busy not only internally, but working through with our consultant WSP, our municipal plan review committee, and others in terms of getting the word out to make sure that people are aware, because this can be, and we anticipate to be, a very transformational time from the city, not only from a policy perspective, but from a zoning perspective as well. So I'm going to try to... So in terms of the agenda today and what we're going to be discussing, we'll provide an overview of the project just to refamiliarize council with what we're setting out to do, look at the work plan, provide an update over community engagement, and outline some of the next steps that we anticipate to be taking in 2026. So in terms of the project team, as council will recall, the city did retain a consultant, being WSP Consultants, a large firm, multinational firm with the project management and planning assistance. We have a number of sub-consultants that are helping us with their expertise. So Williams and Stewart will be providing a detailed analysis in terms of our zoning bylaw, how, if we're looking at creating rules or we're looking at creating new standards, how will they look visually so that we're able to show this to council and the public with the hopes of getting good buy-in, because if we're looking at making changes, having the visuals to go with them certainly will be immensely beneficial. They also have looked at working at Parcel, who are going to be a group that are helping us with our inclusionary zoning and density bonusing study. So we're working through that, again, being led with Alex Forbes, who's here today as well, to kind of navigate those discussions and figure out what could be possible for Moncton and how the policy and zoning that would be needed to enact these types of things, how those could be introduced. So in terms of the project management team, you can see it's quite large. We have had a number of touch points and a lot of interested and affected parties in terms of ultimately who is participating within this process. And obviously, as always, we have council sitting at the top, but we do have our core project management group, which would consist of led by Elaine, but really running through Sarah and I in terms of the day-to-day operations. We're working with directors in all of the departments that may be implicated or wishing to participate in this process. We have our municipal plan review committee, which I have a more in-depth slide on later. We'll be touching base with the planning advisory committee. We have a lot of good work being done in the community, a lot of engagement. I saw over the weekend that some social media posts have been provided to provide an update to the committee, and we're very fortunate that Melissa Hache, our manager of communications, jumped on board right at the right time in terms of helping us get that message out, because it is big and it involves a lot of work, and Melissa and her team have done a really good job at kind of making sure that the message is getting out there, far better than I could in the planning department, for sure. So in terms of that municipal plan review committee, we're meeting every month. As council will recall, we do have members of council on that committee. We do have also 4 members of our planning advisory committee there, in addition to 6 members of the public. So the purpose of that committee is to focus discussion on planning issues that require review and identify potential policies and regulations that are necessary to respond to these opportunities and challenges, while also reviewing concerns that have been expressed by the community through our public engagement process. So again, Councillor Bourgeois, Councillor Edgett, and Deputy Mayor Theriault have been involved with the committee, keeping informed of what we've been up to. A lot of the work to date has been informing the committee through various departments and other initiatives to let these committee members know what we're up to. It's an easy thing to kind of look outside and then see a building kind of get erected from the ground, but the nuts and bolts behind it often is more complicated than just planning and building permits. So we feel that we've done a very good job in informing our committee and really educating them to the point now where we're into policy direction writing and some of the things that are to come. They're well informed across a range of subjects to kind of then provide us with that meaningful feedback that we need to make sure from the public lens that we're on the right track. So as you'll see there, we've met 19 times beginning in October of 2024. A number of presentations, and we are looking again through the 2 public engagement exercises that were undertaken through June and November. So a lot of work with this committee, and Alex Forbes has done a very good job as sort of leading that conversation and really making sure that the committee is informed and on track. So in terms of our work plan, the Gantt chart for this, depending on what we were talking about, could be very detailed, but at a very high level, we're at phase 3. So a lot of that work that began, we launched at the Capitol Theatre, as some of you will recall, around this time last year, to talk about the initiation, try to really get the message out there to the public, looking again at rights holder scan, making sure that we're identifying the community groups that we need to speak with, including First Nations rights holder outreach. From there, into winter and summer of 2025, we were provided a background report which would provide the foundation of the documents and strategies that the city has in place today that need to be considered when putting together this new municipal plan review. All of these phases, as mentioned in the report and on this PowerPoint, is that we did have a lot of community engagement with each section of work. And where we are now is phase 3. So we're working now with an updated draft of our policy directions report that will be coming to council in the coming months, once finalized and reviewed through our committee and our internal departments here at City Hall. Identifying big moves is a big one. So those are those major policy transformational shifts that are proposed to help kind of guide the city where ultimately through this engagement process where we feel we need to go. We'll be completing the inclusionary zoning and density bonusing report that will be informing a lot of our zoning and informing a lot of our standards moving forward in key areas. Again, with that community consultation and making sure that we are keeping the public up to date on where we are as that process continues. Upon policy directions adoption from council, that effectively gives administration the green light to start drafting documents. So that's when we're going to start writing the new version of the zoning bylaw, the new version of the municipal plan. We have some ideas roughly of where we want to go today, so we're starting to put some of that stuff in place. But really, getting this approval from council will really kind of provide us with the affirmation that we need to move forward with the creation of those new documents. Before that happens, we'll be going out to the public with policy directions, the document itself as it is in draft form. We're going through a big social media blitz, a new, and I would say probably an innovative way that we're looking to engage the public that we've not yet done before. So we'll be launching that, we believe, in late May, maybe to early June, with the policy directions and all of the summary of what we heard coming to council for that adoption likely in July. But we'll be meeting to make sure that we firm up that timeline in the coming weeks. From there, again, lots of legal review, so we'll make sure we have to build in time to make sure these documents are cutting the legal test, not only from a policy perspective, but also from zoning. Translation, you can imagine our current municipal plan, I believe, is 400 pages long. Translating that will take some time, so we really got to make sure we're building that timeline in place. And again, looking through that in final engagement to try to say, again, making sure the public is aware from a policy perspective of what is proposed and how that correlates through the zoning, and then ultimately culminating anticipated with a final municipal plan and zoning bylaw. And then we're looking through into, fall 27, we're looking to have a completion so that in the construction season of 2028, that the municipal plan and zoning bylaw are completed. Because we will have to go through a public process in terms of introduction and through public hearing. So similar like we do for a rezoning, but obviously for a much bigger document with much larger implications. So we may need a room bigger than council chambers depending on the level of interest. But that will come, again, we're anticipating likely for final approvals into the spring or summer of next year. Again, determining on how much feedback and how much things will change from those original draft documents that we'll be producing in the very near future. So in terms of that generalized work plan, you can see it there. I just touched on all of those phases, but just provide an overview of the general direction that we're hoping to follow. Again, there are lots of steps and milestones along the way, and our team is working very hard and setting aside enough time to make sure that we're looking at things carefully and making sure if we are going to be making policy direction changes or shifts, that they're rationalized and that they're defensible when it comes time to talk to public and talk to council about what is proposed. So in terms of that engagement process, as I mentioned, it's a foundational part of the work that we're doing. We are effectively, again, looking at that the confirmation of the big moves and confirming those policy directions. So we're kind of around that 50% level in terms of completion. We're sort of at the middle, I guess, of the body of that snake if you look from the beginning to the end. That's effectively where we are, and this is really where the rubber will hit the road from a participation perspective, where you'll see some of the recommended changes or recommended items that are being considered. Getting that public input will really inform the final version of that policy directions document and either affirm or potentially change some of those big moves that are proposed, and that'll be something that we're going to be taking through in the coming months, ultimately, as I mentioned, to try to get to council either at the committee of the whole in June or July, depending on the outcomes of that feedback. So we have had, as I mentioned, a number of public engagement sessions. You can see the list of participants there, trying to get this out and trying to get the message out as best we can. So participation in numbers, again, I think from one perspective it can always be better, but I think when we're at the aspirational or the vision session of where, what we feel the city wants, a lot of people agree that housing is important, accessibility, safety, transportation, a lot of those things, people generally agree with them, but I think where we'll find is when we say how we intend to improve these things or how we intend to change them, we should get a pretty significant uptick in our participation. We've done some other things as well. I was fortunate to do a morning session with CBC every week talking about the municipal plan. So the message has really been getting out there in terms of the informing. Melissa has some better numbers as well in terms of the social media interaction. And I feel like we're in a good spot with respect to the document to date. Again, looking at survey results, all this information is available on the Let's Chat page. Again, trying to be as accessible to residents as we can. We'll also be launching a generalized inbox and email and a hotline for people to call if they have comments or questions when the time comes when a lot of these policy directions documents and the future zoning and generalized future land use mapping comes forward. So in terms of our vision and guiding principles, again, we're very much still at a draft stage. I guess every municipal plan should have a vision statement that we should be able to come back to, that when we look at a policy or we look at a potential change that we're considering, whether or not it fits within this statement. So I can read it. It's quite wordy, but Moncton is a thriving, inclusive, and diverse city where people come first. We lead in climate action and economic innovation, working closely with Dieppe and Riverview to build a resilient region. Our vibrant downtown and the Petitcodiac Riverfront showcase local culture, while our unique neighborhoods offer equitable access to transportation, housing, parks, and community resources. We celebrate our bilingualism and multicultural identity to foster a strong sense of belonging for all. Now that is a mouthful. Something that we talked about at our Municipal Plan Review Committee that said everybody would agree that this would tick every box we're looking for, but it says an awful lot, and it's from a vision statement perspective, it is quite wordy. So in terms of the public response, the public recommended that a more concise, measurable, and impactful statement be considered. So it kind of shows from a work perspective how we're proposing things, getting information back from the public, and then further refining. Generally speaking, in a lot of the work that we've done today, there is general support for the vision statement and other items in terms of areas of importance that the city will be working on. And you can see there, just in that third block, the number of things that the public are asking us to consider. Again, this is the time to be doing that, but there is quite a bit in there, and making sure that we are kind of hitting on those things, whether it's from a policy perspective or a regulatory perspective, depending on which solution would best fit. As I mentioned before, again, looking at the survey results, when these items launch, we do try to canvass as best we can to get results. And generally speaking, there's general agreement that with the statement as it was proposed. But as we mentioned, we're currently working through a revised policy direction statement, and I think you'll see a very similar result that will be a bit more concise than the one that was originally proposed. But it's better to start with more and end up with less, I believe, than the alternative. Something that really has been driven through our public engagement, working with best practice, working with the consultant, is the proposed guiding principles. I won't go into them in depth, but what we'll see here is, again, promoting a city that is people first, that is connected by design, rooted in place, resilient and green, prosperous and innovative, and inclusive and equitable. Again, those are those overarching principles that when we're crafting policy and reviewing current policy, making sure that they fit. If they don't fit, are they going to be amended, or are we going to potentially scrap them and replace them with something that may better fit these guiding principles, which will ultimately provide against the core of what we're trying to achieve in the plan. Again, working with the public, widely accepted, number of residents, again, they're ultimately looking for the civic pride and ultimately being proud of where they are. Again, looking around those visual examples, providing better ideas on financial planning from a city perspective, governance, communication, and how we can be a bit more proactive to make these these principles more actionable. And I feel that's something that we've been working on, the development charge bylaw, some other items where we've been able to be a bit more proactive than reactive with respect to these large areas for development, the vision lands being another one. But again, reaffirming that it seems that we are on the right track and what we can do and what we can do to improve to meet sort of these metrics or requests that are coming from the public. So in terms of the next round of our public engagement, I touched on it in my presentation so far, but we were in the position of finalizing our draft policy directions report and getting it to the public for feedback in June. If we can release it sooner, I think we will, just to ensure that the public have more time with the document. Because I mentioned this is sort of, if we're building a house, this policy directions document is definitely the foundation. And then finalizing a draft municipal plan once we get the directions policy directions supported by council, and present that to the public in September for feedback. That's a pretty aggressive timeline, but we feel that if we get this work done, we can sort of then we lock in on the plan itself and really kind of put pen to paper and working with the consultant to turn this around. There will be some translation components in there, but again, we feel confident that heading into the fall, if it's not September, October, to get feedback from from the planning perspective on that municipal plan. So then in terms of that steps, again, there's some other things we're going to hit. Finalizing that inclusionary zoning and density bonusing study. Getting that council endorsement, again, is going to be a major domino to fall for the rest of this work to begin or be completed in earnest. And really just making sure that anything that we're coming through with has public support. So when we come back and go to that public work in May and June, making sure that there is good buy-in there and that when we come to council, we have the confidence of the public behind us, which should ensure, I hope, a more smooth approval process with respect to that document. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions. Sarah is here as well, and I think if it's not me, there'll be someone here to answer the question. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Josh. Conseiller Butler.
Thank you, Mayor Terrio. Thanks, Josh, for the presentation. See, Alex is here. Good to see him. So I went through this over the weekend, and one of the things that I found since 2016 when I come on council, and I spoke about it when I was on your committee briefly before I had the operation on my hand, was the enforcement part of it. Like, we have done a lot of really great things on paper, but as a councillor, when we get zoning issues, one of the things that we find is that we still have the province we have to deal with. So in other words, there's other provinces that a bylaw officer can go, or a designated person, and give a ticket right there that day. We, as the largest city in the province, and second largest in Atlantic Canada, behind Halifax, is that we can't. If we have an issue regards to zoning, we have to give them a letter saying, you have so many days. Then you give them another letter. Then we got to try to find a court date. And this thing, and this is where I find that always our building and our zoning and planning kind of falls apart a bit. Is that we don't have the ability. We know it's wrong. We go see it's wrong. People tell us it's wrong, but we don't have the authority to stop it from being wrong. And I'm just wondering, so this looks really great, and I know because I was on there a short time, and Alex has got a fantastic amount of experience in this through other areas and Charlottetown areas. But I'm just wondering, where do you see us getting some type of encouragement to put this forward that we're going to have some power? And I can name a couple, but it's public, so I'm not going to do that. But there's a couple that I'm thinking, wow, this has been going on for so long. And you're 2.5 years now looking for a court date for something like this, right?
Yeah, I've worked in municipalities where they do have the ability to enforce through ticketing and what have you. But what I would suggest is that if that is a wish of council, that there always are enforcement measures and implementation measures within a plan and policy, is that we would have a policy direction that would said that we would lobby the province to look at changing potentially the Community Planning Act to enable that exact thing to happen. Right now, under the Community Planning Act, which provides us with the overarching legislation to create plans and strategies and bylaws, does not allow for that, for fining or ticketing, that type of process to take place. But I think there would be no issue coming through with a policy direction to say that the city and maybe other municipalities, because I assume that Fredericton and St. John may be in a similar situation to us with this enforcement issue, to say that that is something that would need to be pushed, because in order for the city to be able to do that, we would need the legislation in order to enable that.
Thank you. I'm kind of well aware that we need the legislation. It's been a thing since I've been on council, but I would have thought that here, where you're into the planning, that this would have come from your committee, that this is great, but we should be going to the province or having our CAO or a committee to go, or maybe the Union of Municipalities for New Brunswick, because, well, Fredericton and St. John, everybody in the province of Brunswick's underneath the
Same legislation, that's right, yep.
But we see as a city that has grown so fast that there are a lot of issues where this would have come in really, really handy. So I'm not sure, would it not come from your committee that, listen, we see the issues with our planning that we don't, that we should be in our plan here saying that we should be lobbying the provincial government to get more power so we can do this? I was thinking that that's probably where it would have come from first.
Yeah, it may, and so I think when we come forward with our new zone, so for that, a lot of that will ultimately fit under zoning in terms of the new standards that are brought forward. But what we will have to talk about are some of the implications of things. So is it easily enforceable? Do we have the resources? And it may come that with this new plan and new policy directions that there may be a need for more staff from an enforcement perspective and compliance perspective. But lacking the tool lacking the provincial tool, I should say, to make meaningful change would make that very difficult. Not to say that we can't do it, but my understanding and from my experience here is that it's the legislation that needs to be changed. So maybe it is a UMNB thing that could be getting worked on today or in the near future, but something that maybe we can work on in tandem.
Well, it's important to me, so I'll throw it back to maybe to Nick through legal. So where do we go, Nick? You've known the files that have come across your desk regards to issues like this. How do we get to start lobbying the province to get more enforcement able to do so?
I think Josh is right. It's an advocacy issue for the province. So we would have to initiate that, and we would have to have council support to do that.
We've never initiated that before, like to see, like all the issues that we have with files for zoning and people starting up business where they shouldn't be, and, and we're never able to stop it. We have to, try to go through the courts.
No, No, we've never asked for that. Under the Local Governance Act, with their revision in 2018, we were able to, the province introduced something similar to the administrative penalties, and then we passed a bylaw for that. So that allows the kind of fines or ticketing that you're probably thinking about. For Community Planning Act, we don't have that yet. There's lots of issues with those enforcement files. I mean, as you're aware, they can be complicated. So it's probably not a conversation we can have today here. Full
No, but it's someplace where we have to start. There's at some time, the way the growth is going in this city, and we're coming through with a new planning plan here, a zoning plan and planning. So I think maybe it's time now that we put, at least, and that's why I thought it might be in this report that would suggest to council that this is what we should do, is put this forward. Anyway, I'll leave it with that, other council. Thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci, Madame la Maire. Three things. The first is I will second Councillor Butler's motion that we advocate to the province that a particular change, prepare a file, maybe send a letter. So I'll second your motion. But what I have to say, the other comments don't deal with the motion. So procedurally, now that we have a motion, we're supposed to discuss that motion. So.
Un instant, Conseiller Bourgeois. So do we have a motion on the floor? Conseiller Butler.
Yes, I wanted it to go into this plan. I was trying to get to is where do we put it? Is it in this plan we put it, or?
No, let's send a letter to the province now. That's what I thought you meant when I seconded.
Okay, that's exactly what I'd like to do then.
So are you seconding Conseiller Bourgeois?
Brilliant motion.
Thank you.
So we do have a motion. Are there questions on the motion? I don't see any. So we'll go to the vote for the
Sure.
motion.
Show of
Okay.
hands. Or?
They won't.
Can we, it'll be an electronic vote, yes.
Okay.
We have additional votes. So just to be clear, that we want a letter sent by administration or by the mayor?
mayor.
By the mayor, asking
For better
for
legislation.
better
Legislative
legislation
modifications, whatever is
Modif-
required to get
Enforcement.
the
enforcement.
authority to
Okay.
implement fines more actively, I guess.
Okay.
So will we see the motion?
Can we bring up an electronic motion?
Let's just-
Okay.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
I thought you were bringing up the motion.
Est-ce que la motion?
We can close the motion. One nay vote.
Motion.
Counselor Edgett and Counselor Crossman is not in the meeting as of yet.
So motion carried, one nay vote, Councillor Edgett. Merci. Allez-y, Conseiller Bourgeois.
J'ai deux questions. The first one is, what is the risk that once, and it's not necessarily positive or negative risk, but once we, following this process, and kudos again to staff, very well presented document, but once we submit the draft for public consumption, it might take months by the time we approve it, and then bylaw ratification, all that stuff, that some developers will see changes coming, and they might want to push some rezoning application before new zoning conditions. I'm sure that this happens every time we adopt a new plan, but is there any way to minimize the, somebody pushing something quickly because it conforms to our existing plan, but it wouldn't conform to the new plan?
Yeah, I would answer that to say that where we're looking to make change or where change is being considered would be, in most cases, to the benefit of the landowner or the developer. We're not really looking to put a cap or restrict things to the point where the situation would be, in theory, worse to the developer. And what we're looking at is something that would ultimately be better. So we're not necessarily, in some cases, if we're looking at allowing more density along a corridor, it would allow, there may be some new design elements that we add into it, but not to the point, I don't think that's going to have everybody rushing to the planning office to get their rezoning in before the big new plan and zoning bylaw gets approved. Our mindset is just not to upset the apple cart, but to be strategic where we're making changes, and those changes should be beneficial to the landowners that are getting them.
Thank you, I'm reassured. My second question, I think it was during the last public meeting. We had the rezoning for the land just southwest of the casino, big development. And the PAC submitted to council two, what I'll call unorthodox conditions. No judgment as to whether or not they're smart enough, but they sort of stood outside the box from what we usually get from PAC. And it was in favor of the development, but conditions about parking, the number of parking, and an argument that we were striving towards reducing parking, and this project seemed to go against. There was a second condition, but that wasn't as important as the first one. And I remember, I should have brought, I can probably check, but staff reacted to that PAC condition, saying basically something to the effect, and this is what Sikkim Shikat, what concerns me, is that they seemed to be borrowing from the potential plan being worked on, being adopted, what we're discussing here today, and applying some of these logical assumptions to a present-day project under the existing rules. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, well, it would be some of the concerns that were raised were matters outside of the reason why the application went to the PAC.
Okay.
Yes.
And just by curiosity, who moved and seconded those conditions at the PAC?
I wouldn't have them, but they would be recorded in the minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
could you check that for me? And I'm really specifically interested as to whether or not the mover and the seconder and/or one or the other sit on the planning committee.
Okay, yeah.
Because if they're starting to bleed from one to the other, we're complicating things here in a dangerous manner, so.
Yeah, I guess what we're looking at there, and from the PAC and some of the comments, and we've not just on that application, but others as well, is that if they didn't like the way an application came forward, and especially with not having access to scope, is those are some of the things that we're being asked to consider. So right now in our zoning bylaw, we have parking minimums, which means we have no maximums. So in that case, it's something for our plan review committee and for our team here to work on to see if that's something we want to introduce, because then that would be something that would fall under the scope if we were to change from a minimum to a maximum. So I think, again, at the end of the day, they've come forward with their recommendations and their especially with respect to conditions, but it is important that they remember to work within the scope of why the application is there. So that's been discussed with them as well in terms of the members and what the scope of their work is and when things are either in scope or out of scope.
Okay,
Yeah.
but we still had those two recommendations or two conditions.
Yeah.
That seem to be outside the present legal framework of our
Yeah,
bylaw.
but if the application came for a rezoning, then the conditions effectively become wide open for council versus conditions that could have been imposed by the PAC. So conditions are very narrow in terms of their scope of conditions, whereas for a council, I feel that, I'm not going to speak for the committee, but I feel like they would have included those because council can impose conditions beyond the zoning standards of regulations because it is a public decision versus the decision-making scope of the PAC.
Yeah, and I don't want to make a mountain of a molehill,
Yeah.
but it seemed, this is one of the few cases I've ever, 13 years on council, where new conditions or conditions that we're thinking about in the future would sort of creep its way into the existing framework of why certain conditions could or could not. But, so I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that if they are, and I may be wrong, but if they are members who sit on the PAC and also on the planning committee and they're starting to confuse the two,
Yep.
I don't want the next council to have legal problems with some of the decisions that we're making now based on what is anticipated for the future.
That's right. I think we could, we'll be having an information session with our PAC about the municipal plan, and perhaps from an administrative perspective, we can lay out a roadmap of how some of these applications can be treated when we are in the process of creating versus what is existing today and is legal today versus what we're considering in the future, and making sure we're creating a clear distinction between those things. We can do that as well as part of our monthly agenda when we meet with the PAC. We can build that into a presentation.
That plus what you did last time, which was
Yeah.
you acknowledged that they had these conditions, but they're
Yes.
not applicable because under the present rules, they don't fit.
That's right.
As long as you
Yeah.
keep that, that's fine.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
Yep.
Merci, merci, Madame le Maire.
Merci, Councillor Bourgeois. I don't see any other questions. There is no motion, so thank you, Josh.
Merci.
Madame la greffière, oui.
The next item is financial statement for March 2026, and Jacques is going to take that on.
Thank you, members of council. So we'll quickly go through the financial statements, and then I will be able to answer some questions. So in the financials as well, the first quarter, it's not really good financials. It's not a financial statements that you start either panicking or you're rejoicing, because again, there's a lot of timing issues of when things were budgeted in what month versus when it actually occurs. And the other thing as well is that there's so many things that are coming that we don't necessarily see the impact. Like, for example, rising cost of fuel and things like that. You don't see it that much in this 3 months span. That being said, one of the good reasons of presenting the first quarter financial statements, it really gives us an indication of how we are doing with our winter clearing. That's a big line item in our financials that can either create deficits or generate surpluses. So that was one of the good things. So now we'll go directly into financial statements. If we go on page 1, so the general fund is currently in a $446,000 surplus position. As you can see, there was a major swing from February where we were in a deficit. That just, again, it backs up my earlier statement that right now there's a lot of timings or so on. Now, 446,000 to the good on year-to-date spend of 65 million. We're trending along that 1%, which is normally where we end up at the end of the year, either positive or negative. Right now, our statements, we have our revenues are worse than budget by 420,000. There's a couple of items there I want to raise. One, Kodiak Transpo, behind budget by 520,000. That being said, it's not necessarily the time to be concerned with that. If we look at the statements from prior years, we see that normal trend in the earlier months, and they tend to catch up when things get busy. It might be the way we distribute as well. Maybe we have to reduce the budget of the revenue budget in the first quarter and push it more to the end of the season, but no concern. And the other item there is parking is behind budget. Again, we're going through a transition of a new system. We have a lot of the old technology that does not function very well. So again, we anticipate being worse than budget at the end of the year on parking, but it should be a one-year thing, and we should be able to manage it within our budget. In terms of expenses, nothing really to highlight at this point. There are some areas, again, there's nothing of concern. The one good thing is in operations, we're in a positive position. So that tends to lead to, we had a pretty good snow year in terms of our from a resource standpoint. So again, 446,000 better than budget, but again, on a budget of 65 million, basically tells us we're pretty much in line. On our utility fund, we are 151,000 better than budget. We have strong revenue, so again, we continue to see growth that generates more usage of water. But we also, that means sometimes we need to spend more to maintain the system, but overall, nothing concerning there. We've also attached the purchase acquisition reports. So those are the items approved within our CAO authority for information. And so I'm ready to answer any questions about the statements.
Merci beaucoup, Jacques. Are there any questions? Comment? Oh, Conseiller Richard.
Merci, Maire Thériault. Merci pour la présentation, Jacques. Going through those purchase acquisition reports, just a question on Franklin traffic line paint. It's a single source. It says standardization.
Yes. So the reason that we go with that type of paint is that's the technology we have to paint. It works really well with that type of paint. So that would be the reason.
So no one else can provide that type of paint, I guess? I'm just wondering why that one, I guess?
Thank you for the question. This is something that's been in place for a number of years now. I believe there were some trials of various paint systems, paint types, vendors, brands, and the team at the time had concluded this was the best paint to purchase for our application. I believe it's not uncommon. If I'm not mistaken, probably Diab will review by the exact same paint as well. So just a continuation of that previous standard.
Okay. Just when it comes to single source, sole
No,
source,
I understand.
I like those questions. And Alexandre, this might be yours as well. Above ground detection systems, and there's 6 locations, 6 intersections.
That might be Renee with engineering, traffic control. These typically would be the loops. Was it yours, Renee? To replace existing loops? Like a traffic control, like when you advance the stop bar, so
Okay.
it detects the car.
But this is saying above ground detection. So it's still underground, but
Or the radar you tried, Renee, is that what it is?
Yeah, thank you for the question. No, it's to replace the loops that are underground. This is actually like an above-ground camera system that detects a vehicle. And so so one of the advantages is it will pick up like motorcycles or cyclists, which are not picked up with the underground loops. But it is an above-ground camera system.
awesome.
Okay.
Very interesting, and too bad we couldn't catch people that are just blowing through the stoplights with that. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Conseiller Léger.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Thanks. Jacques, you touched on the parking revenue that'll be lower. Do we have any idea how much parking revenue we have lost? That's my first question, over the last 2 years. Secondly, we still have some, for whatever mysterious reason, parking meters that still exist. And then we have a whole bunch of poles with no parking meters that are just there. And we still don't have any machines that anybody can use to be able to put in coins or put in a Visa card and so on. Everything is done in the 2 parking lots or 3 parking lots that we have with a QR code, which I totally find unacceptable. And maybe it's only me, I don't know. But, so my first question is what, and if you don't have it today, I'd like to know the revenue we've lost. And secondly, when is this system going to be operational? Are we cutting away the poles that exist, like that are just stuck there? And maybe that's a question to the CAO. I find it's totally unacceptable. And people are coming into our parking lot, and because they don't have a phone and they don't have the ability to be able to pay, they leave and they go somewhere else. And we've received a number of those emails. And so, I don't know, but anyway, I know it's not the time, but it's a top of mind. And I think, I feel, and I will say this truthfully, as a councillor, that we were let down because we went ahead with the proposal to move a new system forward. We were having problems with the system in the back that wasn't working. We had to forcibly open the gate at times and stuff, and then we're left hanging. And it almost seems like, well, if we don't talk about it, it'll go away. So anyway, I'd like to talk about it and see, and maybe get an estimate as to what we're going to do so that people can, feel like they can come downtown and they don't feel like they're going to get a ticket. So thanks for listening to my rant, but it's very frustrating, and it doesn't seem like I see any glimmer of hope, at least that I've seen in anything sent to us.
Well, I assure you, Councillor, that it's not something that we have not been continuing to try to address. I'll ask Jeff to kind of give you an update on where we're at on the delivery of the parking system, understanding, I think when we even acquired the system, we knew there were going to be some delays. And then the question on the revenues, I think Jacques might have an answer for you.
Thank you. So the chief is coming in next Monday to provide an update on wildfire management and the overall fire. So I've also asked him to provide an update on the parking system. So that project is well underway. There has been some delays on the purchasing side and negotiating finalizing the contract, but it is underway. That team is a cross-departmental functional team of finance, communications involved, bylaws involved, and it's actively moving towards full implementation, I believe, by end of August is the target. The biggest delay is those pay station machines. We will be removing the poles. The QR codes will go up. So it is well underway.
I guess that's all well and good, but if you remove the poles, let's say you remove them next month, and then you put up the QR code. What we're saying is if you don't have a phone, you can't park in our downtown. And I find that unacceptable. And I'm not mad at you, I'm mad at the system. I'm mad at how we put this through. And so we need to do a couple of things. We either need to say, until the system is in place, we're going to offer free parking in our downtown. We're already losing revenue. We lose revenue every day. Except for the people that are good enough to put a few loonies or toonies in the parking meter, or they just avoid the parking meter altogether. That spot stays, without usage. Anyway, just to you, Mr. CEO, we need a better solution. We need a better answer, and I think that really, that one I'm really disappointed because we started this last year, and all the excuses in the world do not make it right. I'm sorry, it doesn't. And so, I know everybody's working hard, but bottom line is, if we're going to go through the summer, and we're not going to make it accessible for people who don't have phones and don't have technology and so on, I don't think that's right. So we should plan on making free parking. When the system comes in place and everything's working, then fine, we will move forward. just my thought, and I look forward to whatever details, and I appreciate listening.
Merci, Conseiller Desjardins. I don't see any other question on this, but I do share the same concerns as Conseiller Desjardins. And, I mean, in Halifax, you can pay with your card, I don't know how we're going to, it's not going to work. I mean, not everyone has a telephone.
We'll have an update for council next week.
Merci. There are no other questions. We will go to the next item.
Our next item is subdivision guidelines, and René Lagacé is here, our Director of Engineering, and I would ask you to push the button. There you go.
Perfect. Bon après-midi,
Bonjour,
chers membres du
René.
Conseil. Bonjour. It's a pleasure to be here to provide or to recommend, I should say, an update on our subdivision guidelines. So these guidelines are met basically when we are building new subdivisions in town. So they're not meant for renewal of existing infrastructure. They're really a guide for developers and landowners who would like to build new streets in the city. So really, it's a really short agenda today. We want to provide a timeline that led us to the discussion we're having today. And then we want to go through some of the proposed major changes. It's a fairly large document, as you've seen in your package. So we really want to focus on the changes that may have an impact on cost. Because if we were to propose things that would increase the cost of development, that will in turn increase the cost of individual lots being created. So it would affect affordability in a general sense. So we really want to focus on those items that may drive up or drive down the cost of development. As for the timeline, we've been at this review for quite some time. There's been a lot of internal discussion involving multiple departments. When we think about subdivision development, it's not just engineering, it's planning and development, it's public works, it's parks. There's a lot of department involved. So I think we've been at this for about 2 years, kind of collecting all the data and the comments to come up with some new guidelines. We involve developers and consultants. We've engaged them this winter. We had great success from the consultant industry. They provided quite a lot of comments. We unfortunately only had 2 developers show up at our engagement session. However, after that, they gathered, well, a large group of them gathered and sent us written comments, which was great. It's a document we attach in the package. We really wanted to have the voice of the developers in this process, and that's why we asked for their comments in written format and attached it to the package. And this brings us to today, where we'd like for council to approve these new guidelines that could be in effect for the upcoming construction season. So as far as the proposed major changes, we're just going to dive right into it instead of listing them. The first major change we want to talk about is the sidewalk requirements for local streets. So local streets are our typical residential streets. So if you read our guidelines today, there are no requirements for sidewalks. It actually states that sidewalks are not required unless administration, the city, feels that we should have them. And so what that has led throughout even decades of development is a lot of missing links in our sidewalk network. So you'll see here as an example, Fairview Knolls, where we had sidewalks lead to an intersection and just stop short, essentially. And then we have this great park, Fairview Knolls Park, and people are starting asking about, well, what about this missing link in our subdivision? And so what we did in 2024 is we installed the sidewalk at the city's cost through a capital works project. So when we install the sidewalk after the subdivision has been built, it's quite more costly and more intrusive. So we have to cut into existing driveways, we have to cut into curb, and it's quite intrusive as well for residents. We have a saying in engineering we like to use is that everyone wants a sidewalk on their street except on the opposite side. When we start talking about installing sidewalk in developed areas, usually people would like to see it on the other side because it's intrusive, it cuts into your driveway, your front lawn, etc. Another great example is Savannah Heights area. For whatever reason, there was no sidewalk installed on Savannah Drive. It is a local street, but it's collecting quite a bit of smaller streets as well. It's got, some traffic. And we don't see it on this image, but there's actually a school to the left-hand side. So again, after some public pressure and some need, we installed the sidewalk after the fact. So what we're saying is that we would like to see more sidewalks installed at development stage, where it's less costly for everyone and also less intrusive because the people haven't moved into the area yet. So our existing guidelines, when you read our guidelines, it says sidewalks are not required for local streets. We'd like to flip that around and say that sidewalk is required on one side. There might be some specific circumstances where we would require sidewalk on both sides on a residential street, and in those cases, the city would pay for the second sidewalk. And there might be instances that we would waive this requirement altogether. For instance, crescents or cul-de-sacs. Do we need a sidewalk on a cul-de-sac? Personally, I don't think so, but depending on the type of development, this is where we could maybe waive that requirement and have no sidewalk on certain streets. But we really do think that this will allow us to kind of, avoid some of the mistakes that were done in the past and make sure we have a connected network for our sidewalks. The second major change, still with local streets, again, looking at our residential street, is the width of the asphalt. So currently, when we build a local street in Moncton, it's 10 meters wide of asphalt, or 5 meters per lane, if you wish. What we'd like to propose here is a narrower street, so about 7.5 meters of asphalt. So quite a reduction in the asphalt width. So some of the advantages for that, there's some environmental benefits, of course. Less asphalt is always seen better for the environment. Also, it will reduce costs of the development. So in the previous example, we're asking for more sidewalks that will drive the cost of development up. This is a bit of an offset for that because we're seeing less asphalt, so less gravel, and so definitely less expensive to build. The main thing would be traffic calming. We think 10 meters wide asphalt is too wide for a residential street and will lead to some of the speeding concerns that we have in our neighborhoods. So by narrowing the streets at the development stage, we think is one of the best approach to calm traffic on our streets. Some of the cons would probably be parking. With 7.5 meters, we will not be able to have parking on both sides, that's for sure. We'll have to put a restriction on one side of the street. If we think about snow clearing, obviously there's less street to clear. You might think there's less room to put the snow, but actually, we are actually keeping or increasing the right-of-way. So the road right-of-way is actually the space or the land that we own, and we propose to go from 15 meters to 16 meters. That's allowing us to have larger boulevard, more places for trees, and more places for snow clearing. Another cross-section we'd like to change is our rural cross-section. Now, we don't build a lot of those streets, or the developers do not build a lot of those streets. These would be on the outskirts of the city where there's no curb and no sidewalk, and we have a ditch system like you see on this cross-section. We propose to increase the right-of-way from 20 meters to 25, and that's really just to essentially correct a mistake that was done, because when you add all those areas together, the asphalt width and the width you need for the ditches, it just adds up to more than 20 meters. So we just want to correct that and make sure we have the proper right-of-way in our guidelines. Some of the major clauses that were changed that we want to bring to your attention, one is related to tree clearing. Unfortunately, in a few subdivisions, a few development instances, the developer cleared trees that he was not supposed to clear. He encroached into a conservation area or even into our LFPP, which is city-owned. So what we want to do is have the clearing area or the clearing limits of the trees clearly identified on the drainage plan. And that is a plan that is registered at Service New Brunswick. The goal with this is that whoever's doing the clearing of the land on site has these plans in hand and it's clearly identified where he's supposed to clear the trees and where he's not supposed to clear the trees. We do have a tree protection bylaw, as you're aware, with some fines. Our goal is not to give away fines. We just want to make sure developers are not clearing areas they're not supposed to. Because once it's clear, it's really difficult to get that value back. Another change that is interesting is related to swales. Now, swales are essentially shallow ditches that are meant to take the storm water and clear it away from properties. So you would have swales between houses on the side yards. You would also have backyard swale in the back of the properties. And when you read our guidelines today, these swales are required, which means you have to clear trees to build them. There's no way around it. We want to allow some flexibility in that clause, for building swales. Because what if the current natural state of the land, from a topographic point of view, would kind of drain naturally towards where you want the water to go? What if there's a way to keep some of these trees? And maybe there's a combination of keeping some trees and putting, let's say, a French drain to allow for that water and have the same purpose. What if there's a bit of ponding in the area with trees, and then that's basically, there's a con to having water pond in your backyard, but if the alternative is cutting those trees and you ask residents, potentially some people would be willing to live with a bit of ponding if you're allowed to keep some of those trees in that natural buffer. So this is just it's a small change, but it's allowing the consultants and the developers to look at alternatives rather than just clearing the trees and building these swales. When we build new streets in the city, or when the developers build new street, I should say, we collect a fee for our street tree program. So currently it's $55 per linear meter of street. And our Parks Division is saying that the cost of trees has increased. They've actually showed us these numbers. So what they're proposing is to increase that fee to $60 per linear meter street. And just a note here, this is per side of the street. So this is times 2 essentially for the developer. This leads us to probably the biggest discussion we had internally, and that's when it comes to the layout of our curb and sidewalk. How do we install curb and sidewalk on our residential streets? So we're still in the realm of local streets here. I should clarify that. So a few options here that we're presenting. Option 1 is a sidewalk that is adjacent to the curb. We call it an integrated sidewalk. And the curb is barrier type, which means it's got a vertical face, and then you drop the curb at each driveway. Option 2, there's actually a separation between the sidewalk and the curb. It's still a barrier curb, so meaning it's a vertical curb, but it's actually dropped, again, at every driveway location. And option 3, the sidewalk is adjacent to the curb. However, the curb is always mountable, meaning it's never vertical. It's always down, so it's as if you could drive over it anywhere along the curb, anywhere along the sidewalk, if you wish. So prior to 2019, we had option number 2 for local streets, and this is how we were building residential streets. In 2019, when we proposed changes to the guideline, which was our last revision to the subdivision guideline, we proposed option number 3, which is the mountable curb and the adjacent sidewalk. And that led to some issues, some minor, some major. The first one you'll notice on the bottom picture is that because that curb is mountable and acts as if it's a driveway opening, we tend to see people hop on the curb and park on the sidewalk, as you can see on the picture. Typically around mailboxes or most commonly around school areas. And so parents will park on the sidewalk and wait for the kids as a pickup area. The main thing is around driveway width. So we do have a bylaw to limit the width of each driveway. And when you have mountable curb like you're seeing here, there's no sidewalk, but it's still the same curb that has no vertical to it. It's just mountable everywhere. When you have that type of curb, it's really easy for a resident to just widen their driveway to whatever they want. There's no control around it, okay? When we have a vertical curb and someone wants to widen their driveway, they actually have to call the city so that we can come and cut that curb to the actual width. So there's a lot of disadvantages of having wider driveways on our street. For one, there's hardly any room to plant our street trees when you have these wider driveways. Snow clearing, on the pictures there on the right-hand side, how are they storing snow from their driveways? They're probably pushing on the street. There's just hardly any places left to store the snow. And just the aesthetic of it, we don't want our streets to look like parking lots, and that's what tends to happen when you lose control over driveway widths. So what we're proposing, a major change, is to revert back basically to option 2 for our residential street, is to have that boulevard between the sidewalk and the curb, and to have a vertical curb that would only be dropped at driveway locations, and that gives us back the control over the driveway widths. Now, there are advantages with all of these options, all pros and cons everywhere. For instance, option 3, which we currently have, has the benefit of better drainage. The sidewalk is right next to the curb. It's got a slope on it, so when it rains or the snow melts, it does provide for better natural drainage towards the street, as opposed to option 2, which could lead to some of the water being trapped between the sidewalk and the boulevard. So there's definitely some pros and cons with every option here, but when we put it all together and we had, again, a lot of discussions, I think the cons of option 3 outweigh its benefits, so we want to revert back to option 2. This is the end of my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions, also part of the review team, and I'd definitely like to acknowledge all the work that was done here from the team. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, René. Conseiller Richard.
J'appuie la motion. Puis j'ai des questions.
Tu proposes la motion?
Propose la motion, puis j'ai des questions.
Councillor Steeves, do you wish to second the motion? Okay, c'est bon. Allez-y.
Merci, Mme Asterio. Merci, René, pour la présentation. Je crois que tu avais vu mes questions parce que tu les as touchées, mes notes. En tout cas, je veux juste dire, at the 10 meter to 7.5 meter, I'm happy to see that, and thank you for the explanation of parking where you would probably limit parking on one side. I think that's fair and safe. You touched on tree clearing and you mentioned fines. How does that work? We're not using fines. We have fines available, but can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, we do have that tree bylaw in place where we can fine developers. I will maybe look to Hélène to see if we have used it. I know it's quite new and it's managed by Tim Mormon and his team.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Richard. It is a mechanism we have in place that we brought further clarification through the subdivision guidelines on when fines would be applicable. And there was one so far, a clear violation last year.
So we do use it?
Yes.
Okay. No, that's great. Merci pour la clarification. And in your presentation, you're saying that option 2 for sidewalks is better. I understand that between 3 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually liking 1 instead of 2. Because one thing that you did mention, which I hadn't thought of, but the water gathering between the sidewalk and the curb. I was seeing the aesthetics in the case where grass will be growing there. Now you're telling the resident's going to want to cut that grass, or might not. So I'm just wondering why we wouldn't have gone to option 1 instead of 2 and eliminate that altogether.
Yeah, no, good question. Option 1, where the sidewalk is integrated with the curb, but the curb is vertical. One of the cons is that you have this kind of roller coaster effect of going up and down as a pedestrian because every time there's a driveway, it's dropping, right? Whereas when you have the boulevard, the sidewalk doesn't have to follow that drop in the curb. You can actually because you have that separation. So that's one of the smaller cons, is to have kind of like the up and down like that. The major con is that when a developer comes in and builds a subdivision, he doesn't know exactly where the driveways are going, because usually it's the builders that go after the fact. So they'll put, in option one, they'll put the vertical curb everywhere. They'll put the sidewalk matching the vertical curb. And then once you come and you cut that, there's a lot of waste on your gravel, your concrete. So you end up with, once you start to do that transition, because it's integrated like that, you need a longer transition for the pedestrians, like to have like from mountable to barrier, so from the bottom to the top of the curb, you need a really long transition. Plus, on each side, plus the driveway width, you're almost looking at half the frontage of that lot. So you're essentially kind of losing almost half of your sidewalk and curb from day one. In order for option one to work, we would need to know exactly where the driveways are going, and they would be set in stone and not changed. That's the real downside of option number one.
And I don't see that as a downside. I said, you know, if that's determined up front, power poles are going up every 2 lots, basically. They already know that, if they can, determine where the driveways are gonna be and build it like that.
So from the developers' engagement, that was one major point they brought up, is that the market is changing so much that when they're building a street, they're not exactly sure if it's going to be single-family dwellings, duplexes, whatever fits in that zone. Obviously, they don't want to do a rezoning, but there's different types of models or houses type that fit in that street, that lot fabric. And most of the developers are not builders. Now, in a perfect world, a developer would be his own builder, and then, right, it's the decision comes in and out, and this is like one-stop shop. It's not the case. Most developers are actually selling their lots to builders, and that's where they're saying, I don't even know what they want to build here. And so that option number one was definitely not preferred from the developer community, but also us here at the city. And the downside of option number two that I mentioned, like the drainage, our response to that is between the sidewalk and the curb, where there will be the boulevard, the grassed area. We're proposing to increase the cross slope, so the slope towards the street will be increased to just help with that drainage. So hopefully that's going to help get the water from the sidewalk to the curb. Right now it's 3% cross slope, we're increasing to 5%. So it's going to be a bit steeper to get the water there.
Thanks for the explanation.
Okay, no problem. Merci.
Merci, Conseiller Richard. Conseiller Steves.
Hey, Remy, thank you. On option 3, the slant, as soon as you started your presentation, I was like, I got to ask about this. It's almost like you're in one of those funny rooms at the amusement park. If you come to Augusta and Muirfield on the way to Northrop Frye, I would put that one up against anything in the city as far as the most drastic slant. Were there any rules in the option 3 day towards the height of the slant?
Yeah, so if we're talking like cross slope, which basically the slope from the sidewalk towards the street,
Yeah.
it's actually a 2% slope in our guidelines. And what happens when you have the sidewalk integrated with the curb right next to it, that can be quite perceived like from pedestrian point of view. If you have the boulevard, so the separation between the two, you can actually, have your sidewalk maybe a little flatter in certain areas, less than 2%, and just have that boulevard at an aggressive slope. People are typically not walking on the boulevard. So then you'll basically use the boulevard as an aggressive slope to get the water to the street. But it's definitely more perceived, that cross slope, when you have the sidewalk right next to the curb. And so that's one of the advantages of having that boulevard, is that we can have, it makes for a better pedestrian environment and pedestrian experience for sure.
Do you have any idea how much of the city was done in the slope in the option 3? Is that kind of a stat or a number that you have?
That's a good question. I don't have that number. It's basically since 2019 when we changed our guidelines. So we're talking 6 years of development, and there's definitely been quite a few subdivision development in those 6 years. You know, again, pros and cons, and there might be certain specific areas where, you know, we'll want the option 3. These, I should mention, these are guidelines that are meant as a, you know, here are 3 buckets of street classifications. We can divert from that for certain specific development, depending on density, depending on what type of development is there, right? But, you know, again, we just want to have that change where this is our first cut at it. Every developer coming in the city would see this is what we want to build. If we want to veer from that, that's fine, but it's got to be justified.
Okay, thank you.
Merci, conseiller Steves. Conseiller Butler.
It is. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Rennie, for this presentation. When we're talking, and I agree, I like the little boulevard, a little bit of grass in between there. It just gives you a little bit more, feel safe away from traffic. And also I notice when you have that total slope, I've known walking is that if it freezes and then thaws and freezes again, it's quite slippery when you're going across one of them sidewalks and it's tilted towards the street. Because we're going to accept this, I hope. I'm wondering, over the next like 2 or 3 years, 4 or 5 years, you know, you would kind of know about some that's in the hopper, what's coming. So what do you think, like how much more sidewalk, how many more kilometers of sidewalk are we looking at that we're going to be having to adjust to these?
That's a good question, because it's worth mentioning that, you know, building, let's say, more sidewalk on these residential street doesn't mean automatically they're on our snow clearing plan. That's something I like, that, you know, your question made me think of that.
I'm thinking of that too, so
yeah.
just let you know.
Any new sidewalk would have to go through the same process from the snow clearing, you know, acceptance point of view. It's a good question. We tend to see less subdivision development and more like high-rise apartment buildings, higher density. And the phases of development are getting quite shorter too. We used to see, you know, kilometers of street coming in one subdivision, and now we're seeing maybe, you know, 200 meters of street at a time. So, you know, ballpark, probably looking at 2 kilometers a year of sidewalk, you know, without any calculation. I would have to really kind of dig the numbers there. Yeah, I really don't have a precise number for you.
Okay, so there's a new one going in, a big subdivision on the Charles Lutz Road, not the Corey Craig one, but out farther on the right-hand side.
Vaughan Heights, correct.
Yeah. So are they going to fall into this for a subdivision to have sidewalks?
So good question. We do have a lot of agreements that are already in place, and that would fall with our current guidelines or previous guideline, if you wish. So those plans are already accepted, and so they do not follow what is here in front of you. However, a lot of the wording did not change, and so this would be for any new application. So that means that this summer, we would still be building streets with, let's say, option number 3 on the slide when it comes to curb and sidewalk. We would still be building some local streets at 10 meters wide of asphalt, because again, those plans and applications would have been approved, reviewed with our current guidelines.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm getting around to is that, you know, we're building, and one of the things that I find, especially in the north end, and probably all the rest of the councils do get calls too, but I think it's this budget is coming up for this year. I would really like to give direction to Alexandre and Public Works to have something in the budget regards to more snow clearing equipment. I think we're at this time now. The last time I think it was that we had any was in 2017 or 2018, and at that time we bought 2, and I believe we're at our limit now, if that's correct, Alexandre, in regards to every one of the snow removals for sidewalks. Maybe you turn on your light.
Thank you for the question. I believe council gave us an additional piece of equipment 2 years ago possibly, but before that might have been very well what you're describing to be a number of years prior. We currently have approximately 500 kilometers of sidewalks in the city, so that's grown to what Renee's saying, a few kilometers every year. And we're servicing in the winter approximately 320 kilometers, and we're considering to be at full capacity for our current fleet.
Yes. So I guess that's why I'm asking that, given direction, and I'm sure maybe somebody on council will second it. I don't know if we need a motion or just give direction that when the budget comes this fall, that there would be something in there for snow clearing. Because how long does it take to get a piece of equipment from the time that we give you the go-ahead? Is it a year, 2 years?
I'm sorry, I turned the mic off too quickly. I'd say several months, maybe 6 to 9 months possibly, once we have it in the budget. So typically, what is approved during the fall budget for the following year, we cannot implement until the year after. So if council was to give us additional resources to do more sidewalk snow clearing for the 2027 budget, we would be able to implement it at the fall 2027, winter 28.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, so I'm asking for you to take that direction and have something ready for the budget, and so then at least we'll have something to work on. And that way there, it'll help with the 2 kilometers per year, and then maybe catch up on some that we're missing out on. So I think that with the school program, it's 2.4 to 2.8, and there's some that we missed this year that along Falcon, along a lot of them side streets, along Maplehurst. So to Maplehurst School, there's a few places that T-Berry, for instance, it goes all the way down around now. It hooked, and when we started this program for that area, T-Berry came to a dead end. So now it's got larger. So there's just areas that we have to improve, and it's good to let you know that I'd like to see something from your department for the budget. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Merci, conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci René pour la présentation. 2 séries de questions. Une question, j'imagine, mais confirme, lorsqu'on aura adopté ceci, on va être capable de desservir à la perfection les besoins de développement des rues, puis tout ça, dans Visions Land, puis dans Station Yards. Tout sera comme parfait, puis on n'aura jamais de problème dans le futur.
C'est une bonne question. Quand ça vient à, je l'ai mentionné, ceci c'est vraiment un guide pour, disons, un point de départ. Lorsqu'on fait un développement de l'envergure de Vision Lands, c'est sûr que les rues-là pourraient avoir leur propre rue, disons, et des petites variantes. Donc, on appelle souvent des plans secondaires, ça existe. Donc, encore là, je crois que la plupart des rues suivraient les guides qu'on a ici, mais comme exemple, l'artère principale, disons, qui irait d'est en ouest dans le Visions Land, elle pourrait vraiment avoir, disons, sa propre section transversale avec, encore là, un petit twist qui dirait ceci, c'est ce qu'on veut pour Visions Land. Donc, j'espère que ça répond à la question que ça ne veut pas dire que tous les rues vont être bâties comme ça. C'est quand même un bon point de départ.
Mais qu'au moins, c'est nous, la ville, qui décide si oui ou non les petites variations rencontrent nos besoins. Parce que nous, c'est les développeurs qui les bâtissent, sauf le boulevard principal, c'est nous. Là. Mais en règle générale, c'est les développeurs qui les bâtissent, ils les retournent à nous, ils nous les donnent par après. Mais il faut que ça rencontre nos normes et nos standards. Et tout ça. Et c'est ça qu'on va leur dire qu'ils doivent nous laisser comme rue une fois fini.
Exactement. Puis, cette philosophie-là existe aujourd'hui parce que le guide est en place. Là, ce qu'on propose aujourd'hui, c'est des modifications. Mais tout développeur aujourd'hui doit rencontrer certaines normes de développement. Puis, c'est quand même un processus de révision assez rigoureux. Quand un nouveau développement vient devant nos yeux, on a nos ingénieurs qui regardent ça. Donc, on fait de la revue de tous les aspects du développement.
Mais on l'adopte aujourd'hui, ça veut dire que demain matin, ça entre en vigueur. Donc, un nouveau développeur ou un nouveau développement qui arrive, il est obligé de suivre ça.
Oui, c'est ça. Donc, c'est comme que je le disais, il y a des développements en cours tout de suite qui suivent notre vieux guide. Une fois que ceci s'est adopté, justement, ça doit suivre maintenant le nouveau processus.
OK, merci. Deuxième série de questions, c'est par rapport aux frais, street trees fee, facile à dire. On va augmenter les frais de 55 pièces par mètre linéaire à 60 pièces pour couvrir les coûts qui ont augmenté pour replanter des arbres. Est-ce que 60 pièces, c'est le montant ou est-ce qu'on devrait l'augmenter à 62, 65? Les calculs ont été exacts assez pour dire que c'est ça qu'on a besoin?
On a eu des discussions avec le directeur des parcs, Dan Hicks. Lui, au début, il proposait de l'augmenter à 65 au lieu de 60. Puis, avec des discussions, encore là, on essaie de trouver une balance parce que tous les coûts qu'on fait augmenter au développement vont aller se répertorier sur les coûts du lotissement. Puis là, c'est le citoyen qui va payer. Donc là, on parle vraiment des coûts des lotissements qu'on essaie de garder quand même à un certain niveau. Donc, on est revenu, moi j'ai eu des discussions avec M. Hicks, Dan Hicks, puis j'ai dit, ben, est-ce que 60 pourrait fonctionner? Puis c'était déjà un pas dans la bonne direction. Mais oui, je dois avouer qu'originalement, il avait demandé pour 65 $.
OK. Moi, je préférais, si ça coûte 65 pièces, qu'on le charge 65 pièces. On parle de quoi, là? Disons un lot typique 20 mètres. 20 mètres fois 5 pièces.
Une centaine de $.
100 pièces de plus sur le prix du lot. C'est ça qui va nous faire la différence. Je sais pas, là. Si ça nous coûte de l'argent, je trouve pas que c'est logique de prendre 60 pièces. Je veux pas m'amuser à niaiser, je suis à 5 pièces, mais si c'est ça qui est la logique, c'est de récupérer les coûts, on devrait garder 65. C'est pas ça qui va faire la différence entre un lot de 45 ou 55 000 pièces si on ajoute 100 pièces.
Anne, t'avais-tu un commentaire? Oui? OK, vas-y.
Si que je peux me permettre. Donc, le frais pour les arbres sont mentionnés dans les lignes directrices pour aujourd'hui. L'intention est quand on révise le Fees and Charges Bylaw à chaque janvier, l'intention est d'enlever ça des lignes directrices puis de l'incorporer à cet arrêté-là. Puis comme ça sera révisé à chaque année. Donc, ça ira pas à chaque 6 ans comme qu'on a fait avec les lignes directrices ici. Là. Ça va être révisé à chaque année. Donc.
Tu viens juste de répondre à ma deuxième question. Merci. Merci. Merci, Madame le maire.
Merci beaucoup. Je ne vois pas d'autres questions. So we do have a motion that's been moved and seconded, so we can go to an electronic vote.
Councillor Kingston, can you please vote? Are you still there?
Conseiller Kingston?
Thank you. We can close the vote.
Motion carried. Merci.
Merci.
The next item is the proposed changes to the procedural bylaw, replacing bylaw A418 with proposed bylaw A426. And we have Nick Robichaud, France Levesque-Ouellette, and myself here to answer any questions. And France is going to take it over. Oh, sorry, Nick wants first.
Bonjour, France.
Bonjour, je pense que peut-être mon patron Nick voulait dire quelques mots avant que je commence à parler, donc je vais lui céder la parole.
Merci. I'll just briefly introduce this, and then I'll let France run through a few of the changes. But just to remind council where we are and what we have before us today. We came to council back in October of 2025 with proposed amendments to the meeting procedures bylaw. And out of that meeting, there were additional comments and questions that administration has since gone back and provided answers to. And then there were additional questions that we received from Councillor Bourgeois in March of this year. So attached to this document, we have the public hearing policy, which we were still working on at that point, which is completed now. We have the comments and questions from that committee of the whole meeting. We have answers to those questions. We have the responses to comments and questions that were raised by Councillor Bourgeois prior to the October 27th committee of the whole meeting, and then subsequent questions in March. Those are in 3 separate documents, or 4 separate documents. And also there are a few amendments that we have made to the draft meeting procedures bylaw since that committee of the whole meeting. And I'll ask France to just quickly run through those so council is aware of changes that have been proposed since that meeting. And then otherwise we're here to answer questions basically.
Thank you. So the first section that I want to bring your attention to, I believe at the meeting on October of last year, Councillor Bourgeois had raised the question with respect to electronic means of meeting and the fact that I believe that council was, that we're online, were asked last to vote. I believe that was section 23 in that bylaw, and we had said that we would remove that section. And I noted when I was reviewing the materials that the document that's attached to the CRF still has that section in there, but the intent is to remove that section. So that would be section, I believe, 27 in the document that's attached to the, sorry, it's section 26, attached to the CRF. So the changes aren't that new. I wanted to point that out first, yeah. So the changes aren't numerous from the version that council saw in October of last year. One of the more major change made is new section 11, and that is with respect to meetings that are closed to the public, and it's related to an item added on the agenda that is entitled Councillor Item. And so that section sort of reads that there is an item for that, and that councillor members may raise matters of concern and ask questions of administration, provided the matter or question falls within the criteria set out in section 68 of the Act, and that no outside delegations or presenters are permitted to attend during councillor items, and that no motions are permitted by councillor items unless all members of council present at the meeting consent. So that's a new proposed added section to the bylaw. And then there is a section 12 also that was added, and that is to call special meetings of council. That section was in the I would call it A402, so that was the pre-bylaw to 418 that you currently have. It was omitted when the bylaw was there. However, there are provisions in the Local Governance Act to call special meetings, but council has always followed that process to call meetings, so there's nothing really that's changed with that. It's just adding the process in the procedural bylaw for the call of special meetings. There is a section 21 that was added as well, and it states that members who participate in a meeting, so that members of council participate in a meeting using electronic means of communication, have to follow the requirements for virtual participation set up by administration. Failure to do so may result in the member not being able to participate in the meeting. And apart from that, there's also the section 29 that relates to the agenda of regular public meetings. So the section on land acknowledgement that was already presented to council back in October. So there's an added item on the agenda. And I believe the wording that was presented to council in October has not changed, save and except that we did receive comments from the First Nations group that we consulted with, and they only had one word that they wanted to remove from the land acknowledgement, and the word was traditional. I believe that's what was requested from them. And then in the 29.2 and 29.3, I believe Councillor Steves had a few comments on that section. So we did change the wording to clarify that that the meeting was an open meeting for them to be able to attend council meetings if they wished throughout the year, and that there were special meetings in June and September for them to attend during those specific dates as well. And the group also asked that we add October 1 as a date listed because it was a date to recognize and honor the treaty commitments made between the British Crown and the Mi'kmaq. So we're proposing that be added in as well. And then I believe the other section obviously is with respect to public hearings. So there's a policy, so the language was so that section 45 in the current document that you have before you. So we're proposing to have that amended to refer to the policy in place of the schedule to the bylaw. And we have also recommended that there be a section, I believe it's 102 added. Yeah, it's 102, and it follows the same, exact same wording as the councillor items that are proposed to be added for the section 11 with respect to committee of the whole. So councillor item for committee of the whole, and it follows the same wording that during councillor items, members of council may raise matters of concern and ask questions. No motion be permitted during councillor items unless members of council present at the meeting consent. I believe that is the changes, the practical changes that we had proposed, in addition to the ones that were proposed to council back in October of last year. And so I believe that's it, unless, Nick, you believe I'm forgetting Shelley. Do you have anything to add? So we are here for questions and comments.
Merci beaucoup, France. Conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Merci, France. Nick. I will make the motion because I agree with everything that else is there, but I will add to it, if I may. The first addition is that I do want staff's recommendation, okay? I just do not want it as a recommendation that almost 99% of the time becomes the motion. So make your recommendation and then add a section that would say options so that the chair of the meeting could say, all right, we have 3 options before you. Does anybody on council want to make one of those options as the motion or anything else? The problem is sometimes we don't, because we cannot discuss beforehand, we have to have a motion before we can discuss. And once we have a motion, we can only discuss that motion and not another one. But if we have from the get-go 3 options, 2 options, 4 options, whatever the case may be, and are invited to come up with a 5th option, if that is the council's will, but at least it opens it up for council instead of tying. So the addition would be maybe make something like staff's recommendation, and we do what we do now, just call it staff's recommendation, but then add another section instead of having alternatives, just have motion options or something like that, and present the 3 or present the recommendation as one option, present the alternatives as another option. So that would give us more discretion. The second addition if it's possible, could we give members of council the option in exceptional cases, and this is only where I was concerned, it's not on a regular basis. Well, let's say the menorah. We were sort of painted into a corner on the motion, and then we're forced to discuss the motion, and it turned out that that's not what council wanted. But once we were blocked to follow that road, it's very difficult. I know it's all written, oh, you can always do this, you can always do that. But once we're halfway down that road, it's very difficult to back up and take the other road. So give us an option where somebody could request, Madame la Maire, on this issue, could we have a discussion before you ask us to make a motion? So in exceptional circumstances, and then it would be up to the discretion of the mayor. But as long as we are given as members of council the possibility of saying time out before we ask a motion that carries us this way, can we have a good discussion beforehand? In exceptional circumstances, I don't know how to write it, but that's what I'm proposing as a second addition. There are two other elements here that you basically say it's up to council to decide, so I'm going to make an addition to my motion. Directives to staff made during private meetings must be ratified during a subsequent public meeting of council unless explicitly forbidden by provincial legislation. Okay? The fourth one would be that motions that are defeated in a private meeting should be ratified in public. That's the fourth addition. And the fifth and final addition to my motion would be that every council, every new council, a year after its election, revise the procedural bylaw, and that way they've had a year under their belt of dealing with the procedural bylaw and can keep it as is, can modify it as well. There should be a 4-year review of this procedural bylaw, so give council, the new council, especially new councillors who come in, they can't react to a procedural bylaw the first meeting. They'll need a few meetings under their belt before they are sufficiently wise to the limitations and the challenges and everything else. So I would say that there'd be some addition to the I know we have it in other bylaws, but that, within a year of a new election, there would be a revision of the procedural bylaw. Good? That's my motion.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Oui, allez-y, Monsieur Géron.
I'm looking at our city solicitor and make sure that you caught what was being suggested. So the motion now reads, what is the current motion in the CRF? Procedurally, should we get that one approved, then go to the other modifications, or all part of the same motion, one motion, part of the same, and then debate that one?
Well, I think Councillor Bourgeois is suggesting an amended motion that you want to move.
Well, it's
so
not amended. There's no motion on the table. I am making the motion.
Okay, so it's a motion which which amends the bylaw that we have here. I mean, he can move that. If there's a seconder, we can debate that. Council could decide to divide what's in there, and we could deal with each of those items separately, or they could vote on all of them together. But it's up to council.
C'est bon, merci. So Councillor Butler, you're seconding the amendment. So Councillor Edgett, please.
Thank you, Worship. So we're voting on the amendment or we're voting on the motion?
We would vote on the amendment first, and then.
Well, no, it's a motion. It's a new motion.
Oh, it's a new motion.
Which is seeking to adopt the bylaw as we have drafted it here,
Okay.
plus the additions that Councillor Bourgeois
Okay.
has proposed.
Okay, c'est bon.
I'll be voting against the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Edgett. So are there any other questions, any Anything else?
Could I make could I make comments to respond to those before,
Oui, please.
before council votes, if that's okay? Unless there's anybody else that wants to speak. Okay, I'll take them each in order. So the first item, and this was brought up in I believe it's your attachments 7 and 8. I think this was basically the first item in Councillor Bourgeois' comments and our administrative response. So if council feels that they don't want a recommendation from administration, by all means, that's council's prerogative. Our thought in how we can deal with that is that we don't need to adjust the CRFs. So the CRFs that you receive would still have the administrative recommendation, and it would have alternatives. If council feels that you don't have enough information on the alternatives, we can certainly discuss that, and we could try to adjust that in the CRFs. But we would propose to keep the CRFs the way they are now, and when the chair of the meeting asks for a motion, the question is not, is there anybody here who wishes to move the recommendation? The question would be, is there anyone who wishes to make a motion? So it's a more open-ended question. It allows council to move administration's recommendation if they want to, or they can move an entirely different motion, one of the alternatives or something totally different. So that was our approach to that, and I think that's what I kind of responded in that document. The second item, asking for the option to discuss an item prior to a motion. If council wants, we could add that option into the procedural bylaw. I think where we've come up with issues in the past is because that option wasn't specifically listed there. But certainly, if there are situations where council feels they want to have a discussion prior to a motion being made, that's an option that we can put into the bylaw. I think the reason why that rule is in there, and it's also in Robert's rules, is to avoid a lengthy discussion, which in the end nobody really wants to move. So it just creates efficient meetings. But if there are items where council feels like they need more information before even deciding if they want to make any kind of motion, that's up to council. The item on directions or directives to administration and having all of those ratified. So we've responded in writing. That's in one of these documents also. The Local Governance Act, where it provides authority for directions to administration to be decisions made in private that don't need to be ratified. There's the way that section is structured. It does not forbid certain items from being ratified, but it provides authority for certain directions to not need to be ratified. So they're decisions that stand on their own. And I think that there are situations, legal matters, I'm thinking labor and employment matters, where you don't necessarily want those directions ratified, but you still need directions from council in order to proceed with items. So I think that there's obviously good reason why that authority is provided in the Local Governance Act, that certain items do not need to be ratified in public. So I would propose to leave that the way it is for kind of legal reasons. The next item, motions defeated in private should be ratified in public. I know we've had conversations before about how we deal with recommendations in a private session. So I mean, this is council's opportunity today to have that debate and discussion, whether we want to change how that process works. So we can certainly have that discussion. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of a situation where we do not want to ratify a negative decision, but certainly those could be out there. And I know Councillor Legier has brought up the question of whether or not we even want to make recommendations at all in a private session. So, this is council's opportunity to discuss and debate that if they have further ideas. And then the last one, an annual review by council of the bylaw. We can certainly write that into the procedural bylaw. I think it's a great idea. These bylaws should be reviewed annually. You can see how long this one took to review. It does eat up a significant amount of time, because as you go, we're kind of constantly learning about different procedures, so, but we can take that on every year. It could be something that we do maybe in the middle of a council mandate, so we just do it once every 2 years, and then with a new council. But we can add into the bylaw whatever review cycle council wants. Thank you.
Merci, Nick. Conseiller Bourgeois.
I can wait until the end if people have other, but as the mover, I have the last word, so I'm fine to wait for the other members to express themselves.
Merci, Conseiller Richard.
Merci, Marie Thériault. Merci d'avoir présenté, France. Thanks to the whole team. That was a huge lift, so. I'll direct my question towards the CEO. I appreciate France mentioning item 21, electronic communications. Still having concerns with the requirement as outlined. I understand the intent behind it, and I recognize it's not an issue created by administration, but rather a limitation of the technology itself. In the past, technology allowed members the flexibility to attend either in person or virtually without advance notice. I do not believe that newer technology should reduce that level of accessibility. Schedules are not always predictable. Things can change throughout the day. If a member plans to attend a meeting in person but circumstances shift, they should still have the option to participate virtually. Under the current setup, that flexibility is limited by the technology that we are required to use. I recall there were discussions about reviewing or improving this technology, yet it appears we're maybe facing some constraints moving forward, including for the next council. So, Mr. CEO, tu dis quoi?
Merci pour la question. As you indicated, late fall or early winter, we started the review of the technology. I know there's a working group internally led by our General Managers of Corporate Affairs, who unfortunately is not here today. So we'll get an update for council on where we're at on the current review on technology for council.
Okay, so, and I guess, I'm not sure who's, somebody's going to want to answer this question. I'm just going forward with this technology. If there are any council members attending meetings virtually, since they are only seen when they are given access to speak, I would strongly suggest that all votes be done electronically for those meetings. Anytime that someone's online. I mean, I've lived through it, and I could lift my hand, but nobody's going to see me, so just a suggestion. Merci.
Merci, Conseiller Richard. Conseiller Léger.
Merci, Madame Mélès. Yeah, Nick, I had brought up and have brought up a number of times in terms of the format of private meetings and the necessity for them. And at least my understanding was that we're never to make a decision in a private meeting. And that's something that I feel very strongly about, although for years it has, it's gotten better in the sense that we, in 2012, we used to make decisions and then just come out to council, indicate that we were ratifying what was discussed in private, and that was it. So we went beyond that now with, with more detail. I understand when it comes to negotiations, HR issues, and so on, that those are times where we must meet in private. But is there any reason why we could not have a discussion in private with absolutely no decision and no recommendation, possibly direction to staff? So for example, in a negotiation, it would be direction to staff as opposed to a recommendation. And you just said that if we were negotiating and if it was something sensitive, we certainly wouldn't want to ratify it. But in turn, we would like to give direction. So I'd just like your comments on that, because it would make it, it would give the ability for discussion, but yet it amounts to no decision except for direction to staff.
Yes, so I hate to use absolutes, because there could be situations that arise where we need a recommendation from council in private before before knowing how we proceed with next steps on a file. What I could say is that we could do a better job during agenda review at looking at all of those items that are going to private, taking a closer eye and saying, do we really need a recommendation out of this item? Or can we just seek council's recommendation on it when it comes forward to a public meeting? So maybe that's a compromise, kind of a starting position that we can take, and we can see how if that makes a difference.
I'd agree with that as a start, because I think then it will allow fewer and fewer of those situations. So, all right, so please take note of that. Thank you. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? J'en vois pas. Conseiller Bourgeois, vous avez terminé? OK.
Non, je vais clore le débat parce que c'est ma motion. I have to respond to Nick. Maybe I didn't explain myself very clearly. I'll get through the details of it, mostly to repeat what I said, but maybe I didn't explain it the right way. But my goal, and I think our goal, should be to make sure that our decisions are more transparent than they are now. That is one of the reasons why I made some of these motions, these additions. And most importantly, we must make it easier for the next council to make its decision. So to me, that's the framework. When I present these things, I am convinced, if you're not convinced, like Councillor Edgett, that these are not going to help us make more transparent decisions or communicate them to the public or make it easier for the council members to deliberate and make decisions, that's fine. You'll vote against as Councillor Edgett, that's okay. But if you can find something better, that'd be great. This procedural rule, we are obligated by legislation to have one, so it's very important as a bylaw. But these are our rules. They're not Robert's rules. We can supersede Robert's rules, and then whatever is not covered by these rules can be covered by Robert's rules. That's the way it usually goes. You have to have very good reasons why you would adopt something that's different from Robert's rules, but I think I presented the reasons why. I don't know where you got the information, Mr. Robichaud, but I started off by saying I want staff's recommendations. I did not say I didn't want it. I just said I just do not want that recommendation to be the only decision option, and that the alternatives be put below. Get them all together as decision options, motion options. Because, yes, we can, like you've got great explanations about how we can do it this way and that way. But it's not the simplest way, it's not the clearest way. The clearest way is if we had a distinction between staff's recommendations, top, and then what does council have as options or any new one. So the way it's done now, practically, how it works, 99% of the time the mayor does, and maybe it's more better information to the mayor, but it's still every once in a while, 99% of the time really, the mayor will look and say, all right, does anybody want to move the recommendation? That is what is happening. What I want to avoid is that. I want the mayor to say, okay, and she would, or he would, have, right in front of them, everybody else would have, these are the 3 or 4 options under possibilities of motions. So the mind refers to that part of the CRF instead of the staff's recommendations, which would be one of the options, amongst other things. So I just want to make sure that I want staff's recommendations, but not as a leading option. I want staff to remain neutral. Maybe I did not explain myself clearly when I said in exceptional circumstances, we should have as councillors the possibility of asking the mayor permission, can we treat this particular topic, this particular item on our agenda in a different way, where we would not be bound into a corner by somebody having to make a motion before we can discuss. Because, and I use the menorah example because to me it was sort of the worst case or best case, depending on how you want to look at it, to say we were forced to go down a road that I don't think too many of us wanted to go, but we went there because we had to go with a motion. If we could, on those exceptional circumstances, say no, before we make a motion, we want a discussion. So that's the intention behind it. On special occasions, discretion to the mayor, but the ability for council members to say, no, this is special, this is really complicated, this is really sensitive as an issue. Let's have a good discussion first before we are bound to take a specific road. And the directives to staff made during private meetings, just as a decision, this time we don't, presently we do not ratify this, but it's just as important as any council decision. In my opinion, anyways, I may be wrong, but when we have a motion, seconded, voted, then it has to be ratified in public. I agree with that. But when a directive to staff is adopted by council, it's a decision. Why should it not, for the sake of transparency, be presented during the next public meeting? If we believe in the directive that we have given to the CAO, we should believe in the obligation for us to be transparent to the citizens, that this is the direction we gave to the CAO. So I understand your explanation, but as a councillor, as a democratically elected member of this community by the rest of the community, I want the rest of the community to know what their council is doing. And if it is through a directive to the CAO, let's make that public as well. And I specify, unless explicitly forbidden by provincial legislation. So the negotiations on labor things, land transaction, the other conditions that we should be able to deal in private and not having to say that, because whether it's a decision or a directive to staff, these are protected. These, we can't go out in public.
Conseiller Bourgeois, je m'excuse, là, je vais vous interrompre. J'essaie vraiment de comprendre, OK, parce que je trouve que vous amenez souvent des bonnes propositions. Mais je suis vraiment confondue avec celle-ci parce que, and I'm going to, we don't have translation, right? Oui? Okay. I just want to make sure my English colleagues understand this. So what you're proposing, to me at the moment, seems to be almost what staff is proposing. I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood Nick, but I thought he said we didn't have to ratify in public the directives to staff.
Correct.
So what I want is that when we adopt a directive to the CAO, it should be ratified in public. If council wants to vote against that, that's fine. Me, I think we should be transparent to the public and say decisions, that's already, we have to ratify them in public, that's already there. But the directives to staff is not covered. I want that to also be ratified in public.
So can we do that, Nick?
Well, I want to respond on this. So the Local Governance Act explicitly allows authority for those directives to administration to not need to be ratified. There's nothing forbidden. You referenced the different categories of topics: land transactions, labor and employment. Those are items that can be discussed in private. So we're already in private, we're already discussing those items. The Local Governance Act provides authority that when you're in those discussions, it recognizes that there are certain situations where you can provide direction to the city solicitor, the CFO, the CAO, whatever it may be, directions that they can act on without that needing to be ratified, because there are certain sensitive topics. So it's not written the way you're describing, where there are certain things forbidden. You're already in private, so those items are already covered within this. Certain decisions need to be ratified. Certain directives do not. So
And that's not what I'm arguing. What I'm arguing is that when we make a decision through Form A, which is a motion seconded, voted, and through mode B, which is a directive to staff. Why does this one have to be ratified in public, but this one does not? That's what I want, is to have the directives be ratified in public. The same way that we ratify motions moved and seconded and adopted.
I understand that, and I could provide you in follow-up in writing certain examples where we simply cannot bring those items forward publicly to be ratified. There's
Unless explicitly forbidden by
But nothing is
provincial-
forbidden under the Act. Nothing is forbidden under the Act. You're already in private, you're already discussing labor and employment items, you're already discussing land matters, you're already discussing security, all that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
the Act still recognizes that even within that bubble, certain decisions should be ratified, certain ones shouldn't be. And they're leaving that discretion to municipalities. So I'd be very uncomfortable stating a rule in our procedural bylaw that every directive and every decision made in council has to be ratified publicly. We're going to run into situations where we just can't do that. Or we don't ratify something until a year down the road, once a certain, legal matter has been resolved or a labor and employment matter has been resolved.
All right, then I will trust your feedback, appreciate it, and I will withdraw that last one. If it was Councillor Butler who seconded, I'll remove that one, the directive to staff. The other four I stick to. Merci, Madame.
OK, c'est bon, merci. Donc, oui. Je n'ai pas compris.
I just have another clarifying question maybe for the solicitor. In Conseiller Bourgeois' request, when it comes to a recommendation with the alternative recommendations and so on, in our current procedural bylaw, that it's still valid. I mean, I don't know if we need to are there any requirements to change the procedural bylaw to accommodate what Conseiller Bourgeois is requesting? Because it currently states that there is recommendation and alternatives. It's how we present it rather than how it's actually written in the procedural bylaw. The procedural bylaw says that the only thing is we don't debate it until a motion is made, and you can take the recommendation or not. It has nothing to do with the procedural bylaw in how I looked at it, but.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, and I think I understand what you're saying. Your concern is with the bold recommendation in the CRF being staff's recommendation, and then below are other alternatives. I think you want to see how maybe they're a bit more on equal footing. We could still identify one as being administration's recommendation, but then provide the other alternatives. And I do still think that we can kind of provide training with the new council, with the new chair, that when we're looking for motions, the question is, does anybody have a motion they'd like to make, as opposed to, does anybody want to move staff's recommendation or whatever the case may be. And you're right, none of that really requires an amendment to the bylaw. That's just kind of procedure that we can look at.
I can remove that too if you want to make it into a directive to staff to put all the recommendations or the options on the same footing. You can have the recommendations beforehand, but when you get to the section of possible decisions, all of them, 2, 3, 4 of them, have equal footing, and we're not forced to sort of react to staff's recommendation.
But we
So-
still identify which of those are staff's recommendations.
Yeah, you just put it beforehand.
Yeah.
The staff's recommendation, that'd be a section, and then the next section would be decision options.
Right.
C'est beau.
We
Donc,
good?
ça va?
Perfect.
So we're okay with the mover and the seconder for the motion, the amended motion? Do we need to read, to show it on screen?
Can I just ask one item? The other item was the motions defeated in private should be ratified in public also. I don't know if there's anybody that wanted to discuss that, but that's still there.
So to wrap up, there would be 3 additions, the motion as presented by staff today, but one is to give councillors the option of requesting a discussion before a motion. The second one is to motions defeated in a private meeting would be ratified in public, and that I think after 1 year, that should be good enough. I don't see the reason to wait 2. So after 1 year, each new council reviews the procedural bylaw. Those would be the 3 additions that would stand, and the rest are directive to the CAO for the presentation of decisions.
If I can just make one comment, the item about motions defeated in private session being ratified publicly, I mean, to me, I'm not sure that one needs to be in the bylaw either. We can take that as direction if, I mean, we can vote on it here, but I don't know that needs to be written into the bylaw, but if that's how council wants to move forward with our private items, we can do that.
So how would you know if it's not in the procedural bylaw?
Well, because we're taking direction here that all decisions, whether positive or negative, would be reported or ratified publicly.
I disagree. I think that we should be as clear as possible in our procedural bylaw on how do we want to proceed. And I think if this isn't put in, sometimes it'll go by the wayside and we'll forget about it. And 2 years down the road, say, oh, why don't we ratify, isn't it, it's not in the bylaw? There was a discussion about it. No, let's make it clear. Let's put it in the procedural bylaw and it'll be done. If the next council wants to remove it, they'll remove it.
Okay.
Is everyone comfortable with the motion? Are there any changes? Councillor Steves?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to give Nick just another opportunity. Is there anything else that we should know? I am certainly not able to track it as deeply as Councillor Bourgeois. Appreciate his expertise on that. I appreciate your expertise on that as well. But I want to make sure that you're okay as well to a degree, Nick, before we go ahead with this. So kind of another chance for you to say anything to inform us. Maybe I'm the only one that's not tracking at the deepest level of this and want to make the right decision.
No, I mean, my only remaining concern would be with the second item, that motions defeated in private session be ratified publicly. I can't think of an example off the top of my head right now, but I think administratively we can deal with that. But I mean, each of you may be able to think of a situation in the past where we've had an item brought forward that didn't move forward in private. But otherwise, we can manage these items.
Councillor Bourgeois?
To answer Councillor Steves, I don't remember any instances since 21. And I don't remember the exact nature, but I remember at least 2 or 3 motions that were defeated in private when I was here from 2008 to 2016. They were of importance, but they were never ratified in public. And I thought, why not? I mean, when we say yes, it's got to be ratified. That makes perfect sense. But when we say no, we should be transparent enough to our citizens to say, we did discuss this and we voted that way. We rejected the motion that was, and here it was. So I think we owe it to the citizens to be fully transparent as much when we say yes as when we say no.
I have a question. Nick, how do other councils, municipal councils, do this? Is this the way they proceed, or is everyone doing everything differently?
Yeah, we did research into how other municipalities have their procedures set up in terms of private meetings also. Some don't vote at all. Shelley, you may have information on this. I think you reached out to a couple of your counterparts, but they do it differently. Like some do it differently.
Most of municipalities that I reached out to do not vote during it's just everything that was discussed is voted upon as one whole. So it would say that item 1, item 2, item 3, with the titles would be voted on. Yes, that's going to go to council, the other ones aren't, so they're just kind of in limbo. Some municipalities do it the same way we do, that we vote on it and then we ratify them in public, but the majority don't do it that way.
C'est bon. Merci. Thank you. So can we go to the vote? Yes.
We can close the vote. Councillor LeBlanc is gone. I see that Councillor Crosman is here. Welcome.
So motion carried, 1 nay vote, Councillor Adjet.
Thank you. Oops, turned myself off. The last item is the strategic plan update, and I see that Claude is in the room, and Serge, you are going to introduce this.
Thank you, Clerk. So strategic plan priorities and updates. So again, this is a continuation of our strategic planning exercise through the last year and a half or so, where we started with the strategic planning exercise. Last fall, we did the prioritization of those prioritization of those items. Since that time, we've been working, or Claude and his team have been working on the results to date, as well as the reporting tool that we're going to be using to be able to provide information back to council and to the residents on our success and or progress with the strategic plan implementation. One of the elements that has come out as well, and I think Conseiller Bourgeois, it was one of your recommendations, it was about ensuring that the new council that will be voted in a few weeks will have the opportunity to review these priorities and either validate and or change. So the plan would be that by providing you this information today, and as we continue to refine the I guess dashboard or reporting tool, the plan would be in August, September timeframe, would be to be bringing that forward to the next council to have the conversation, to validate, provide them an update, and also make any modifications if required. I know Claude, you and your team have done a lot of work in bringing the information together, but a lot of the work, or the work that's being done on this, is done by all departments. It's not just strategic priorities and planning. So I will now pass it along to Claude to present what we have so far.
Bonjour, Claude.
Good afternoon, bon après-midi tout le monde. So just before I start, one of the things, both links are now live on the website to look at all the 2025 results. So that is up live as we speak. Comme vous le savez, le plan stratégique de 2025 a été adopté par le Conseil en décembre 2024. And prior to me touching on the 2025 results document, how that document is structured, I'm going to provide an overview of the strategic plan itself for the people that are here in the room and also who may be viewing online as well. Doesn't seem to want to move.
Just swipe.
Yeah. Nope.
Nope.
If it's stuck or what? There we go. Parfait. Donc, notre plan stratégique, évidemment notre vision, which is une ville inspirante, as well as our mission, which is working together to enhance the quality of life for all residents. There we go. Regarding our core values, the core values are really defined as how a municipality will act, not necessarily what we do. And for our core values, we have sustainability, inclusivity, innovation, accountability, excellence, et aussi le bilinguisme. Now, the strategic plan has several elements to it. Il y a 5 piliers, 15 buts. We have 39 strategic initiatives and 58 outcomes. So obviously, a lot of work is being done towards a strategic plan with 58 outcomes that obviously are part of the 2025 results, which are on our website as we speak. And furthermore, Council had a session and ranked their priorities out of the 39 strategic initiative and chose 6 specific ones that were ranked and that we were moving forward with all of the priorities, but also those who had a special little extra set of eyes on it, if you will. So the first pillar, safety and security, deliver effective protective services. Just before, I'll go back for a second. The ones that are highlighted in bold, those are actually the 6 of Council's priorities that they ranked. So when you see the one that are bold, and as I move forward, those are the ones that Council had ranked. So deliver effective protective services, promouvoir, revendiquer les logements adorables, et aussi créer un environnement sécuritaire. So those are the ones that were on the strategic plan within safety. For the economy, c'est attirer et fidéliser les entreprises et les investisseurs, support sustainable development, population growth, and make strategic investment in infrastructure. Now we'll move to the environment, which one of the priorities of Council that you ranked was reduce greenhouse gases emissions and other forms of air pollution, s'adapter au changement climatique, and manage and enhance natural assets. Then we move to the culture and recreation, which is to support and embrace culture, heritage, and bilingualism, deliver exciting and engagement programs and events, et investir dans nos espaces publics pour les rehausser. The final pillar, which is governance, which is to be a well-managed and responsible organization, increase and diversify stakeholder collaboration and resident engagement, et finalement investir dans les employés et dans l'innovation. So that's just an overview of the strategic plan itself. So now we're going to move over to the actual documents that are online. Justin will be bringing those up. So here we have how the actual layout looks like on the website. And just to go over a few things, when we see a star, those are the ones that Council ranked their top 6 priorities. The green circle is either would be 100% completed or on target. On target ones would be multi-year programs or multi-year goals that we may only have achieved 20%. However, over the long term, we're confident we'll be able to achieve the 100% over the amount of years that the target is set for. The square, orange square, is near target. That means it would be between 99% and 75%, so we're well on our way. I guess there may be a few things that come up while working on the projects that delayed it a bit, but we're confident we'll be able to get those to the finish line. And the red triangle means we didn't meet our target, which would be less than 75%. So I'm going to start with safety, and I'm going to touch on the Peace Officer 1. Try to move these both at the same time. So basically going to open up deliver effective protective services, and that's one of the Council's priorities that you ranked. And if we go down to the third one down, come on. Oop. There. Oop, I went too far. There we go. So this one here was trying to work towards our community officers becoming peace officers. One of the first stage in 2025 was to make them City of Moncton employees, which was one of the sort of prerequisite before we'd be able to move in that direction. So that was 100% completed. And you'll see also in the 2026 column, which kind of shows what's coming next, I guess, which is already this year. It's basically, hopefully, we'll be appointing them as peace officers this year. So that just shows when it's 100% green, that's kind of how it's laid out. So, deuxièmement, je vais regarder l'économie. Donc, pour l'économie, une des cibles, c'était augmenter la densité au centre-ville, et la manière qu'on allait faire ça, c'était d'accroître l'assiette fiscale. Donc, dans ce cas ici, on remarque que c'est seulement 18%, mais c'est quand même vert. La raison pour ça, c'est d'atteindre les 200 millions, c'est entre 2025 et 2029. Donc, l'administration est confiante qu'on pourra se rendre aux 200 millions par 2029. Donc, c'est pas qu'on a raté la cible, ça va prendre plusieurs années pour s'y rendre. Donc, ça, c'est l'explication. Souvent, quand on va au vert, c'est 100%, mais ça, c'est pour que le chiffre à côté indique que c'est 18%. Now, we'll move over to environment. And here I want to touch on one that we did not achieve. So, the one that's here for was basically implement the active transportation plan, and that big piece there was to install physically separated bikeways to make it a lot safer for people to use their other skate, roll, or ride along the way. So our target was to separate those on St. George Boulevard, McLaughlin Drive, and also to build a multi-use path, Mapleton Road, under the Trans-Canada Highway. So the reason it's only at 65%, most people ask why. You'll notice there's a B next to the 65. So when we scroll down a bit, we'll get to B, which has an explanation. In this particular case, the main reason we didn't hit the target was McLaughlin Drive wasn't separated due to some warranty work that had to be done. It was only done late in the summer, so by the time we would have put the barriers up, it'd almost been time to take them out again. So it's not that we weren't ready to go. There was warranty work. Didn't make sense to put them up right away. Obviously, those will be put up this year come springtime. And finally, I'm just going to touch on culture and recreation. Obviously, you wouldn't be scrolling two at the same time, looking at it by yourself. But so here it was really looking at renovating our heritage buildings, leading by example to make sure our buildings, one, are well maintained, but also that they look good and they're going to last a long time, the test of time. So it was to look at doing the envelope in the Thomas William House renovation. We only got 85% done last year, and that was just due to some unforeseen circumstances when they were working on the building, found a few things that they didn't think they would find, and it just slowed down the process a little bit. So in a nutshell, that's how it works. So 100% green. Green with a less than 100% means a multi-year. And obviously, anything that's orange is between 99%, 75% done, and the red is the ones that we didn't achieve. And obviously, the comment is really what's going to help to explain, I guess, to the citizens of why we didn't achieve that and what we're working towards, especially showing the 22 and 6 target as well. So because there was so many, we were looking at 80 different things we could have discussed. We're going to leave it at that and open it up to any questions. I'll try to answer what I can. If not, the GMs are here. If there's anything more specific about one that you'd like to touch on, obviously we're open to that as well. Thank you. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Claude. Are there questions on the strategic plan? Conseiller Bourgeois.
Pas une question, un commentaire. Moi, je suis très content, merci. C'est clair, c'est précis. Que quelque chose soit vert ou orange, t'arrives des fois le pourcentage. Mais au moins, les gens sont capables d'être informés de ce qu'on fait, comment bon, qu'on accomplit les résultats, etc. C'est sûr qu'il pourrait y avoir 22 000 détails, mais là, on noirait la population, ça serait trop. Ça fait merci beaucoup. Merci.
Merci.
Merci, conseiller Léger.
Merci, merci beaucoup pour la présentation. Je dirais exactement la même chose. The only, and it really does display very well on the iPad anyway. However, when I put in strategic plan, City of Moncton strategic plan report, it should bring me right to that tab. Instead, it brought me the strategic plan, read the full strategic plan, take a look at the full, I kept going and kept going, and then I looked over at Councillor Bourgeois to see where he was, and then I realized that there must be something on the bottom of the page. So perhaps we could get a link so that if I put in report, it immediately brings you to that page, because it's really good. I may, if I had not known that, I might not have even looked at it, because I wouldn't have been able to see that it was there. But the format is really good, and the translation's really nice, and yep, excellent job. So to you and to communications and everybody involved.
Thank you very much, and that's a good point. We'll make sure, I see taking notes there, so we'll make sure we fix that.
And remember, that was using Google, so maybe it's different when you go on the website, but people just we just Google it, so
Appreciate
somehow
the
we can
feedback.
bring that up.
Yep, thank you very much, much appreciated.
Thanks a lot.
Maybe I'll just add one comment, and thank you for the comments. Again, you're right, and appreciate the work from the team, and it was not only Claude and his team, communications, all the departments, and as indicated, it just went live within the last hour, so those are the things that we'll work on, and to ensure that it's maybe easier to navigate, to get the information.
Merci, Monsieur le Gérant. Merci à tous. Donc,
Merci à vous.
Merci. So, conseiller Richard, on va clore la réunion. C'est beau. Merci. No one's objecting.